Hey all, this is Jess. Welcome back to Sunflower Dairy. I am out in the greenhouse and today I want to talk to you about preparing for the up and coming season. So before you start going through all the catalogs and trying to figure out what you're going to do, the first thing best to do is to try to make a plan. I find the best way to do this is to write down actually what happened this past year and what your goals are for the next year. So not necessarily like writing out all of your goals, but trying to figure out what you actually want things to look like, what worked for you this past year and what you would like to improve on, and trying to improve anything that you think needed improvement. I find a lot of times if I draw out a space like a garden area or anything like that and try to figure out different things, figure out how it was planted this past year, what worked out, what didn't, and then trying to figure out what I want to change for this up and coming year. That makes it a lot easier when I'm going through all the different catalogs to actually figure out what I want to actually be planning on and planting. Also, before you start going through the seed catalogs, it's best to go through what you already have and kind of take inventory, figure out what you have and what you need more of, or what worked this year and what didn't, and maybe you want to try some different varieties and see if they'll work better for you. I store my seeds in these 4x6 photo containers. These are nice because you can sort out your seeds in different individual categories, and then you can organize them in a case, and it kind of helps you keep everything in a certain spot, and it's easier to look through everything so that you can go through everything that you have. Another thing to be thinking about is if you want to be growing in trays or seed cells, or if you actually want to be growing in pots or just containers. So going through, seeing if you have all of those things, looking and seeing if you have enough trays, if you have enough seed cells, if you have enough pots, if you have enough soil, going through all of those and kind of seeing what you're going to need and writing all of that down. Another thing to think about is if you already have a garden, if you want to continue gardening the way that you have, say you're gardening in raised beds, so figuring out if you want to stick with that method or if you want to maybe move to in ground garden or even containers. So kind of figuring out, what you did and if you want to do something different and if it worked and if it didn't. So trying to figure that out and plan for those things. The next thing to be thinking about is if you're going to be starting things in a greenhouse or if you're going to be growing things with grow lights. Also, another thing to think about is if you're going to need heat mats, because some things like peppers need a little bit of extra heat to jump up out of those seed trays and start growing a little bit faster. So those are all things that you want to be thinking about as you're thinking about planting for the up and coming season. So a lot of the different seed companies that I like to order from are Johnny Seeds, Baker Creek, Botanical Interests, M.I. Gardener, Fruition Seeds. All of those different ones are nice because they have a lot of those heirloom seeds, a lot of those seeds you're not really going to see in other places, or even if you go to a garden center, you're not going to be seeing any of those different varieties. These places are going to have a lot of those really cool different varieties, like, different colored tomatoes, different colored carrots, all different ranges and different things that a lot of times you haven't really seen, especially if you're, just getting things locally. A lot of times you're not going to find a lot of those really cool heirloom seeds. So these are places that I like to get seeds from. Now, when picking out seeds, I like to, if they're an heirloom seed, I like to see, where they were grown, their story, if they're going to grow good in my area. And then, like I said, a lot of times you can find those really cool varieties that you wouldn't normally see in other places. So those are kind of things that I like to think about, will they grow good here? Is this something that I can find somewhere else? And, different things like that, the story of how it was grown. So thinking about those things, you know, and also is it something that we're going to actually eat and use is another thing as well to think about. So thinking about some of those kinds of things are good to think about when you are picking out seeds for your up and coming season. Alright all, I hope this has kind of helped you get your mind ready for the up and coming season and be able to start planning out for the next growing season. So thank you all for watching. Have a blessed day.